Hi, Michelle asked me to speak very briefly about a structure that I've been developing for introducing explicit learning around teamwork and communication skills within a broad problem-based learning context. Now, the motivation for the structure that I've been working towards, that I use in EG 1000 in Engineering 1, but can be applicable to many different types of subjects. The rationale was, it actually stemmed out of my teaching of later year design subjects in engineering. And in those subjects, it became apparent that the students, if they were getting any teaching around teamwork, it was very shallow, and a lot of the time they weren't getting anything other than maybe a couple of PowerPoint slides. And additionally, the way that they were learning how to write reports and work in teams and, just general English language skills were that these concepts were being delivered and the students were perhaps working on a project with them. They were then getting assessment with some feedback from the lecturer, etc. And then they were going and moving on to the next subject, and we were assuming, or at least expecting, that all of the feedback that they got, that they were learning from. But there was no closed loop in that. We weren't assuring that that learning had happened in the subject. We were just assuming that, it was assured in the next follow-on subjects that get more complicated. And particularly in first year, when you're trying to introduce these topics to the students, that's not necessarily the case, particularly when a lot of students don't even come and collect their assessment. And so if they're not collecting their assessment, they're certainly not getting your feedback and learning anything. So we wanted to actually close that loop. We wanted to assure the learning. And one of the best ways that I've found to do that is instead of having a single project in a project-based learning structure, introducing two projects. The first one, simple, where you introduce a lot of that learning and a really prescriptive flow. And then the second one, more independent, and you can realise a lot of the reflection and improvement in that. So you'll be seeing the structural diagram you should all have in your handouts, and that indicates a structure for a subject that might introduce this type of concept. So there's two projects. It tracks the 13 weeks of semester, and all of the grey spaces are classes that aren't explicitly communication skills or teamwork, and that's the subject-specific content. So in my context with the Engineering 1, that's things like design skills and ethics and sustainability and 3D modelling and that kind of stuff. But it really works with any other type of content that you might want to have in that subject for any discipline, any type of subject. The specific subjects that address the teamwork are highlighted in yellow, and so there's a couple of tutorials and a lecture on that, and the communication skills are highlighted in green. And the way that the subject progresses is within the first project, the subject starts with the post-entry language assessment to just make sure any students that need a little bit of extra assistance are provided that. And we break up into teams immediately because the entire subject is structured and contextualised based on the projects. And so the first tutorial is splitting the groups up into their teams and actually giving them the task. They start to work on the project, and other lectures deal with the specific content of the project. But right in the middle of that project cycle, we provide them with 3 explicit English language skill lectures. And that's as they're starting to write up the report. So all of the teaching focuses on the project, but that central section focuses on the actual writing. Then at the end, the students submit their work, we mark it, we provide it back, and we have a very clear reflection lecture. And that lecture teaches them how to reflect on their performance both as teams and time management, and to a certain extent their language skills, but that's more later. And then we actually use that for them to write reflections and start to build a portfolio of how to improve their teamwork skills. Then we split up to the second project. And in the second project, I specify their groups rather than them. And the first tutorial is them coming up with all of the different new strategies and working on the strategies that we worked on in the reflection lecture as to how to improve their group performance based on what they did wrong in the previous one or what was successful, and a lot more advanced group work skills. And then they go off and work using those for the second project. Now, the first project is very prescriptive, and all of the tutorials step them through each step of the project that they need to complete, both in terms of the subject-specific content and the language skills and so forth. The second project is more independent, and so they have more flexibility and freedom to actually work together as a team in whatever format that works. The final bit of actual formal teaching is in the middle of the second project. We actually have a lecture that kind of closes the loop on the English language skills. And in that lecture, we give them global feedback on what they did well in the first report, what could be done better, and some really advanced skills for things like editing. And so that's to kind of complete the reflection mechanisms on the language skills. And then by the time they submit the second project, they will have demonstrated twice their writing, they've demonstrated twice their teamwork, and they've had the opportunity to both put it into practice, then reflect on what they did well and what they didn't do well, and then improve on that in the second project. And we see a real change in the way that the students perform in terms of both writing and teamwork skills as a result of the two-stage process that isn't generally observed as effectively if you just had a single large project throughout the entire semester. And so that's broadly the format of this structure. The real advantage of it is it's project-based learning. There's no formal examination type assessment. You are teaching English language skills, you're teaching group work, and you're able to actually get a lot of those learning outcomes really effectively through the two projects.